Stint podcast.
Cool. And we're live. This is Matthew coming back to you with a special interview on the You Deserve a Drink podcast together with Rizzle. This week, we're really excited to have another awesome builder join us. No need for a long intro this week. We are really stoked to be joined with John Crain of the SuperRare project. Welcome to the show, John.
Matthew, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
And I know you've been on a ton of shows, but your story is pretty awesome. So I need to ask you, tell our audience who you are, what your story has been up into this point. And then for the 0.001% of our audience that doesn't know what SuperRare is, tell everyone what SuperRare is.
Sure. So born on the East Coast, raised in the West Coast, got into some Bitcoin stuff early on in New York, tinkering around. I have a background in UX and product development, so kind of got interested from the software angle. Got super excited about Ethereum when I saw that coming down the pipeline, and then got really excited when I saw CryptoKitties. I kind of thought NFTs were sort of the next standard that was going to help transition this from chaos of speculation into more of a meaningful cultural movement for a broader audience, and decided to start experimenting and launch SuperRare in April 2018. And for anybody who doesn't know, SuperRare is a crypto art platform and marketplace built around specifically one-of-a-kind NFT digital art.
That's cool. And then, I listened to your story in other places, and I know CryptoKitties was sort of like an origin, obviously, for SuperRare. When CryptoKitties came out, is that when you fell down the crypto rabbit hole, or had you fallen down that earlier? I know you were at Consensys.
Yeah. So, I fell down the crypto rabbit hole a little earlier. I actually... I was in an intro to econ class in 2008, and the market was crashing. I was studying engineering, and I had zero interest in finance. Probably barely knew what a stock was or anything at that point. And I was just what do you mean this mission critical component for the world is just falling apart? This is a tough concept for me to grasp. So I kind of started studying and reading more, and got pretty interested in Austrian economics and gold, and was kind of falling down that rabbit hole. And then at some point ran across Bitcoin, and I was oh, this is pretty cool. I could get behind some math-based standards for, how a financial system would work. And so that's sort of where it started. So it was just really on the outskirts, no major success stories. I think I tried to mine Bitcoin and ran up a $600 Amazon bill pretty quick and had no Bitcoin to show for it. And I was wow, this sucks. And so, but, I continued to experiment, and finally met some folks in New York who, were kind enough to answer my thousands of questions that I had about how everything worked and what was going on. And then, so hanging out with that New York Bitcoin Meetup is how I heard of Ethereum for the first time. And that's when, my eyes sort of popped. I was whoa, programmable blockchains. And then initially I was no, I think it's too complicated. I don't think it's going to work. And then when they launched the network, whenever that was, summer, I guess 2015 maybe, I started poking around with our SuperRare CTO, Charles. And that's when my mind was really blown. And I was all right, I got to just quit my day job and figure out how to work on this full time, because it's so amazing.
John, how did you get from there to art? I totally understand falling down the CryptoKitties appeal, the NFT rabbit hole. It all makes sense to me, but you've gone in a very, very specific niche direction. Do you have art background, or was there something about the art scene that really grabbed a hold of you, or how did you end up in that, particular area?
Yeah, so I always loved to like doodle and draw. So I ended up going to school for civil engineering, but I originally thought I was going to do architecture. Then was like, now I'm going to be practical and do civil engineering, which didn't work out either way. But I've kind of always loved to do that. And actually, the first time I like really started learning to code was learning processing. So like you guys might be familiar with processing. It's like a creative, artistic programming language. And someone had showed me something they made with it, and I was like, holy shit, how did you do that? Like, I want to like take these sketches I've been making and, add some random numbers. And like, I kind of got really interested in, doing processing sketches. So that was like how I got interested in art in general. And so that's when I kind of started going to more, art shows, like more as a patron though. I never really was like, oh, I'm going to be, I didn't really see myself as like an artist. I was more just like a kind of a patron interested on the sidelines. And then really part of the inspiration for SuperRare was like, thinking about Ethereum and like the amazing capabilities. And then, thinking about platforms like Instagram. And I was like, there's got to be a better way, like a better business model for, people to create amazing art, but then have them actually get most of the value out of it versus like in the case of like Instagram, I would argue that Instagram gets most of the value. Like you might get lots of distribution, but they're taking the lion's share. So I was kind of interested in art, trying to think about like, how could we build better, online communities that support creators? And that all converged in SuperRare.
Well, I was just going to say, well, thank God you did end up pursuing it from this angle, because obviously, I mean, there's at least an initial product market fit here. I mean, depending on the day and the valuation of Ether, like $300,000 earned by artists, that's freaking awesome. They over 3,500 artworks collected. I mean, being a collector, these numbers are amazing to see. And I'm just wondering if there's any even juicier or any more surprising stats about your user base, like the collectors, or like anything that you're willing to share about the project that our listeners may be interested in. That'd be awesome.
Probably one of the most exciting ones for me is just the like kind of like seeing the collector base grow, which means it's going to be good for all the artists on the platform as well. And so over the course 2019, that was up like 1,000%, which was just like a mind-boggling number. I think it was like the first time I really experienced like significant growth and like usage of software that I was working on. So that was just like, oh shit, is this really happening kind of moment? And one, I guess a stat maybe that's like not impressive in the fact that it's a huge stat, but I think it was about 2 months ago when one of the artists on SuperRare, I believe it was Xcopy, he earned a commission on an artwork, like for like he earned a royalty that was more than he initially sold the artwork for. And that was super cool. I was like, oh shit, like this is the sort of, it's like, it's a simple tool, but it's also super powerful for the artist, and it's working kind of how he had hoped it would. So that was sort of like a personal stat that I was like, oh shit, we're doing it. This is awesome.
That is amazing. And yeah, we've talked about that a whole bunch of times, about the royalty aspect and how that's such a game changer for the artists and everything. So John, I have a question, and forgive me for bringing it up. We can always cut it out if you don't want to dive into it. But, I see you guys as like big pioneers in this space, and, big pioneers, have big responsibilities. And anytime you make a decision, it's going to ruffle some feathers and some people are going to be happy. So there's some sort of like attribution situation going on right now at SuperRare. And I'm not sure I fully understand it, but I was curious if you don't mind to explain the decisions that were made and the ideas behind them.
Yeah, sure. No, it's very exciting. And it's one of those areas where, it's definitely like a gray area in the art space. I think in one of the podcasts you guys mentioned like the copyright being like a a razor thin line or something. And so we've been having lots of debate about it, and it was the impetus for it was like, well, if people are just using creative, they're sort of like, we're putting our name on, like, we're like sort of backing all the artists on the platform. And if there's people who are just using Creative Commons work and sort of like representing it as completely their own work, that, it's an interesting situation to be in for the collectors. Like if they're buying work under these, like not totally understanding what went into the creation of the art piece. And so we've been just trying to figure out, what's the best sort of like happy medium. I think, like, as we've seen, obviously, so, there's no way to make everybody happy, but we sort of think for the long-term success of everyone, I think if we could sort of make it a standard to kind of like make an effort to give attribution, where it's easy to do, obviously not make it too taxing. I believe in the Telegram, someone literally compared attribution to having to file your taxes. And so we're certainly not trying to build a platform that feels like
Shout
doing
out
your
Gary
taxes.
Cartledge.
Yeah. Sorry, Gary, that wasn't our intent. But so that was kind of the thought behind it. And as always, it's, I think sometimes or at least I'm personally surprised, like when we do something and then there's like super strong reaction. It's like, oh wow, maybe we should have thought about that a little bit more. But it's how it goes.
Someone's got the daunting job of drawing that razor thin line, right? Is that like you guys as a team decide, or is there someone who's got like a fine eye for this, who's like, this is cool, this is not, or who makes the final call?
So that is a very good question. And we're going to try to, so we're talking to a couple people. There's a few, I want to get this woman's name right. But Cynthia, she was a co-host of the Art on the Blockchain podcast. I don't know if you guys had ever listened to that. It'd been around for a while. And so she's like an amazing IP lawyer who's like super interested in crypto. So, we're going to try to reach out to her and kind of help. We need guidance here. None of us are IP lawyers, and we're just trying to, sort of like protect like everybody involved. So like, make sure it's a good place for collecting. It's a good place for people to put their art up, and like make sure, we don't get killed with lawsuits, especially right now when we're pretty small.
The background behind it, I think, is super understandable. Also, I mean, because there are so many unknowns right now, it's understandable to have a more conservative approach before you speak with either an IP lawyer or maybe someone from like a law firm that is more specialized in art law. But also within the Telegram itself, like shout out to Zach Yanger and then John Perkins for really being on the front line and responding to just the objections and the initial kind of, it wasn't outrage, but people were shocked. And there's definitely some artists that are impacted by this attribution decision more than others. But I mean, kudos to y'all for keeping it balanced and making it clear that it's a work in progress, because no one really knows what's going on, but it's all about trying to protect all the various interests involved, like from the collectors, from you guys building the project, and eventually the artists.
Yeah. And I think that's the best way to think about it. And like, maybe it didn't seem like it when we first started talking about it, but like, it really is a work in progress. Like, we're completely open to discussing it. We're not trying to like make decisions in secret and then like announce them.
Mm-hmm. And then like on that work in progress note, I mean, because there have been some iterative changes like to the amount of like a fee that you take and things like that. So just for everyone, like all the artists out there, like what exactly is your current fee structure, like in terms of the royalties that go back to the artists on the secondary market? Could you clarify like all those different numbers for everyone so we know exactly what the deal is?
Yeah, for sure. So basically on the the primary sale, it's a 15% commission for SuperRare. And then, so that's like split with the artist, and then 3% marketplace fee for the buyer. And then on the secondary sale, artists get a 3% royalty, and there's also the 6%, or so total it's 6%, but it's 3% for the artist, and then 3% that the buyer is paying.
And then I think it's really hard to look out and build for anything longer than like a 6-month horizon. So I'm just wondering, like, what is next for SuperRare? Like, are you going to be updating the auction smart contracts by chance? Is there anything that you're going to build out specifically, perhaps for the collectors? If you could detail what's going to happen potentially in the next 6 months, I think that'd be sweet. And then, I mean, if you're able to, just assuming everything goes absolutely perfect for SuperRare in the future, like, what's your pie in the sky, like, view or hope for what SuperRare will be?
All right. Yeah. I'll try to hit all those, but you could let me know if I forgot to touch on one of the questions. But yeah, it's, we're super excited about this year. It's, just based on everything that happened last year, I think our conviction's stronger than ever that this is like one of the most exciting things, we could be working on. And so as far as tools for collectors, we recently brought back on a designer we've worked with before to kind of help us reimagine sort of like what it's like for a collector to like check out their sort of collection on the website. So kind of like thinking about that from both a public and a private perspective. So kind of, like right now we have the offers tab, you have like a favorites tab. And so kind of trying to reimagine, like, what does that look like for the collector? Because we kind of just added it in there on the public profiles. And so we're like really trying to reimagine what that looks like. So 6 months from now, we're going to have a kick-ass redesign for that. So I'm super excited about that. Because I even find myself sometimes getting frustrated and I'll want to like go build a new feature. And then I got to be like, no, stick to the existing Trello cards that you have. So yeah. So we're pretty pumped about that. And we've been doing so like you mentioned the auctions. I think, we've made it a pretty long way with the simple auctioning system that we have. And I think it's sort of run its course. There was also some scandal around people placing lots of low bids.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Druid.
Shout out to the Druid, really stress testing things, which is always awesome. Like sometimes you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And then you're like, this is great. Like where the community is small, like we can still have these cool conversations. So I really appreciate all the stress testing. But yeah, we're kind of reimagining what auctions can look like. And then also something I talked to you about, Matthew, in Japan is like, how do we make the bidding wars sort of like a first-class citizen and something that's cool to check out in the website? So we've been brainstorming and, doing sketches, just trying to figure out, how to best do that. So I think over the next 6 months, those are kind of like the big ticket items that we're looking to knock off. So very excited about that. And then, yeah, pie in the sky, I guess. One of the things that I'm super excited about, we've seen kind of like IRL meetups in crypto voxels, which is awesome. I think it's super fun. And one of the things we've talked about that would be really cool is like, if you could have also in-person meetups. So like if you had, crypto art's huge, everyone in the world's doing it. You could have like pop-ups in different places where people are like, putting on VR headsets or they got computers. So they're hanging out in real life, building community, but then also people around the world also congregating in virtual spaces like crypto voxels. I think that's a pretty fun future and like a cool way to interact with art. as much as I love traditional galleries, I think we can do a little bit more than just have white rooms with art on the wall.
Cool, man. John, I got a couple like long-term scenario questions for you because I feel like SuperRare seems to be on like the very high end of like quality assurance, and that's like your guys' niche. You do a really good job of verifying that the art is coming out are legit. You got the 1 out of 1 copies coming out, so like a lot of time and effort has been put into generating an exclusive piece of art. But I've got to imagine like, there's got to be times or will be times where you onboard an artist and they totally flop, or you've got an artist already on board whose quality of work deteriorates over time and they're not selling through. Are there any like, and maybe there aren't now or there will be in the future, are there any like ongoing quality assurance metrics that like if I'm an artist on SuperRare, I got to hit this in order to stay afloat? Or is it like once I'm in the club, and grandfathered in, or how does it work, over time?
Yeah, that's also a good and challenging question. It's something we talk about a lot. I think like really our goal is to make it so, we want like one of the long-term visions for SuperRare is like that it's going to be more customizable for your own tastes. And I think like quality is an interesting word. I don't know if you guys read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. That whole section on quality and like, it's a complete spectrum, and like one person can see quality where somebody else, sees a void of quality. And it's like, it's super tricky, especially in art, it's like my tastes are super different, from everybody else's. And so we kind of like, our main stance is like, as long as you're creating original work, it's like, it's tricky to say, say like, okay, this is low quality, this is not. And so really we want to design the system to where it's like, if that's not, my cup of tea, then it's not something like I have to see every day, versus like now with like the completely shared activity feed, it's like you have to look at everything, whether you like it or not. And so, yeah, I think our long-term goal is to make it so like you can kind of curate your own experience how you'd like. And, if it's not up to your own personal standards, you don't have to look at it. But it's super challenging. I mean, we talk about it a lot. We're like, does it make sense to have a hard cap on the number of like tokens people can create, or like, what are things that make sense to implement? So that's sort of, it's also an ongoing debate with, no ultimate solution yet.
Yeah, the whole space poses a lot of like very interesting questions that I'm sure aren't like necessarily readily apparent when you've initially dove into it. Are there any other like surprises that have come out of this, or any like other unintended like successes or consequences that you didn't see coming?
Let's see.
Or has it gone exactly as you planned?
Yeah. I mean, like, what was the surprise?
maybe that is the biggest surprise.
I guess one of the biggest surprises, like, is just how quickly it became like a somewhat global community. I think like, another thing we're working on is like internationalization, so like adding some other languages. From places where you have like the site's more popular. And I think we were pretty surprised that like, and it could be like, thanks to like Hackatao, Mattia, like, and, Massimo, like shout out to all the guys in Italy for spreading the word. Like there's a surprising amount of traffic from Italy. Like my wife speaks Italian, but like, other than that, like I don't have any connections with, like close connections with people in Italy. So I think it's been super cool to watch, the whole space grow and see like it is a pretty diverse and like global community. So I think that's like probably one of the things that it's super exciting and definitely not something we were like, okay, we're going to roll it out in the US and then we're going to go to Italy and then Japan's next. Like that all kind of just happened. So that was super surprising. And I think just like, the variety of art that like shows up and is like, people really appreciate. Like, obviously, like with music, it's like I have friends who I hate their taste in music and they obviously hate my taste in music and we're still friends. But like, I feel like with visual taste, like I didn't know how like it was going to be quite the same, or it's like sometimes there's people, who initially like join, you're like, oh man, this is not me, like my favorite type of art. And then everyone else loves it. And you're like, well, there you go. Like who am I to know like what, art's like super interesting. It's kind of nebulous. I guess one thing that I was very surprised about is like a lot of people don't like art. Like you say the word art and they like have this like extremely strong emotional response. Like I can't tell you guys the number of times I like started describing SuperRare to people and they were like, oh, that's not art. And you'd be like, what? Like, how do you know what art is? Like it was pretty fascinating. Like people, maybe, some like more traditional art folks are like, well, I know what art is. Like it comes from, people who go to the, RISD and then they like are exhibited in MoMA and like what you're doing is not that. So it doesn't count. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it was like people who are just like, art's dumb. It's bananas taped to walls. Like it's nothing. You're like, but both people had extremely strong reactions. So I was like, wow, you guys feel like really angry about this, or it's like, I was like, geez, this is a strong response. So I think that was also a pretty big surprise.
Yeah, the internationalization or like the global first aspects of crypto art, but then crypto in general, it's always amazing to see how that manifests. And I mean, in the art world, like typically it's like there's the US, there's the UK and China, at least from like a buyer perspective. And it's cool to see like the whole world having a shot at like owning some, in my opinion, like valuable art. And I guess that idea of digital ownership, I think it's surprising to a lot of folks, like how strong that actually is. I know a lot of people in crypto like to talk about how like Bitcoin buyers or Ethereum buyers have like strong hands and like ability to hodl is highly lauded. But Jesus Christ, when it comes to digital art, I think they probably have way stronger hands in terms of like buying art and holding onto it than I've ever seen anywhere else. Like the hodl meme is probably even stronger, I'd argue, in crypto art than anywhere else, as is the FOMO of a new piece coming out from like a popular artist, which is crazy to see. And then just like your innate desire to covet and own a piece of digital art is really strong and always surprising to see in many other people. And I feel like putting art in this digital form factor is going to surprise a lot of people. Like you're mentioning, like people's reaction to like what is art being very polarizing at first. But if people actually make the step to look at what this tokenized art is, to buy maybe their first piece of crypto art, they'll readily see how real this shit is. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've been personally surprised at. So, I mean, you guys are helping to prove out an entire industry, not just like your specific niche, which is, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, it is pretty fast. I think you're right. Like the HODL meme really does apply. And yeah, I think, just from some of the other kind of collectors that I've talked to, there's always, often people are like, it's a couple things. You're like, I now have a close connection with the artist, and that's super valuable to me. Like it may or may not be valuable to lots of other people, but like, I feel like I now have this close connection with this artist, and like, it's super hard to like put a price on something like that. It's like, I have a surfboard that like one of my roommates in college, he's kind of like an illustrator. He like drew some really cool stuff on it. And it's like, if someone wanted to buy that from me, I'd be like, yeah, good luck. Like, I'm not going to say, and I think that's maybe, at least part of it is like, it kind of can mean different things to different people. And so it has been super interesting to see the HODL meme play out.
And kind of like on that point, like what are some of the artists that you're buying and scooping pieces from and looking to HODL for the long term? Of course, I'm sure there's some big names everyone will recognize. And then like, are there any new artists that you're looking at and saying, I'm going to scoop as much as I can of this individual artist?
Yeah, I thought this might happen. I was like, I don't want to like, play favorites too much. I feel like people get mad at me, but I think, there's definitely a few. I think one of, I don't know if you guys have seen like Twisted Vacancy. I think his stuff has been super amazing. And that's, I've loved that style for like a really long time. And so that's been pretty incredible. I think Stina Jones, she's also got, I love the kind of like crispy line, illustrator type work. I think that's really great. Obviously the OG classics, I think like I could probably never have enough X copies or Hackatows. But that's probably not a surprise to anybody. I'm sure people are going to get mad at me for, not mentioning them on the podcast. I love all you guys. And then another one, let's see. I don't know how to say her last name. It's like Anna Dejoux. She's also an illustrator. She's got some of those like super funky dogs smoking cigarettes and skateboarding. I could send you guys some links. I don't know if you've seen her stuff. She's not super active. She dropped a bunch of pieces and then is, on doing other things, but I love her stuff. And then also, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's like Osina Chi. So he's in Nigeria and he's doing this kind of like, it's like textured collage, like stop motion. I don't know if you guys have seen his stuff.
I scooped a couple pieces from Osinachi. His color work is just, it grabs you so immediately. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
It's like, it's a complete like visceral response and it's like kind of mesmerizing. So yeah, I think, his stuff is just incredible. So I'd say that's the top of the mind right now. But last one, Satio. I love the super trippy 3D stuff. Oh my God. That's like, my wife and I like literally spent an hour the other night just kind of going through and like talking about which one we should buy. So that's the kind of stuff like I want on an enormous screen, like right above my desk.
I just think it's so cool. What I was about to say is, everyone you talk to who's doing something in this space, who, believes in crypto art from the business end or whatever, everyone is also a collector and passionate about their own pieces. Even people like yourselves and people who are in charge of other platforms and businesses in this space, everyone you talk to has their own little stash of artwork that they love too, which I just think is so awesome and is what's really needed to propel this space forward. Like you really need not just like some businessmen to come in and create a platform. You need people who are genuinely passionate about like what is actually happening. And it's cool to talk to another one of us, man.
Yeah, that was like one of the things early on. We would joke, we're like, well, if this doesn't work, like at least we all have super cool digital art collections now. And like, that's a win. So like, I'll take that. But yeah, I think it is one of the, it makes it different. Especially some of the like, more VC type folks who I've talked to are like, well, how's this thing going to scale? And like, they're just like really hammering on metrics. And I'm like, it's hard to quantify like I feel like what I feel is like the natural growth of just like, it's a new, or like the coalescing of a community, it's like, it's not the sort of thing where you just dump more money on the fire and it gets bigger, it's like, there's lots of nurturing and people build personal connections and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's for sure a movement, and you can feel it palpably growing and getting stronger every day. And it's crazy that this particular community is within crypto, bar none, like the best group that you could probably ask for. But on top of that, just the growing belief by people that have been active in the traditional art world, looking at what's happening in crypto art from a creative standpoint, and just labeling this as the new art movement, which is like once in a generation, if it happens in a generation kind of phenomena. So you got to understand that. And if you're not on that boat, well, that sucks. But you kind of just mentioned this in passing, how like Sato's work would look dope on a big screen or something. Like, do you guys have a setup of like monitors or whatever to display all the art that's on your site? Like, has anyone on your team nailed that kind of real world display problem that everyone seems to bring up when they talk about crypto art?
So I'd say nobody's really nailed it yet. I don't know, you guys might have seen, like, we've done some framed iPads that I think look really nice. They're unfortunately like too small, or, they're not as big as I'd like them to be. I think they look good. So we all have a few of those. I'll like cycle through my own collection on those just because it's fun to do. And we bought a couple other displays, like done experiments. And it's pretty tough. Like if you don't spend like a significant amount of money on the display, then like the art doesn't look that good because like the display is not that good. And it's, so I'd say like we're constantly experimenting and like playing around with it, but nobody's really nailed it yet. And like, I don't know if you guys might have seen like the Samsung Art TV. It's super expensive. It's like, I mean, maybe it's worth it too. And I haven't, myself purchased one, but it's like, that seems a little pricey. But at the same time, the other experiments that we've done so far, like, didn't really have the result we were looking for. So yeah, we're still doing lots of playing around. We have a couple screens in the office that we like to cycle through with different stuff, just like dedicated to art to keep us inspired. But they're basically just flat screen displays that we bought. And yeah.
I was just going to say, this is my ongoing gripe with this space in general. And I feel like in order for, people like my mom to really, really, truly grasp how cool this is, I need to be able to beam it right to her TV or show it to people in some like fairly straightforward, seamless way. And I've tinkered around with things, and other than like basically downloading and compiling my own folder, which I then have to figure out a way to cycle through and send it up to a screen or whatever. I mean, it's totally possible, but I haven't come across anything like very slick or streamlined that just ports it right from your Web3 browser or something like that. What were you going to say, Matthew?
I was just going to say, like, the Scent team, like at our HQ over in Venice, we have a bunch of tablets set up along the wall. I think similar to what you guys did with the iPads, where we are displaying like work from the artists that are sharing their stuff on Scent. And then every Friday we're putting out this Scent spotlight. And for those artists, we're just featuring them all over the house with their work in those tablets. And like for our offline like parties and events that we're throwing at that house, like everyone gets to walk through and kind of engage and see with what's going on with that art. But yeah, to Rizzle's point, everything is just hacked together right now. Like there's no real super approachable, like really easy, like I'm getting that solution yet in the space. But it's cool to see everyone trying to hack something together. And I think it's just like a timing thing. Sooner or later, someone's going to find the secret sauce in terms of a setup, and they'll get that out to the folks that are passionate about collecting digital art. So no worries there.
Yeah, it's a matter of when, not if. It's definitely happening. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
It was awesome to be able to speak with you. I know like we want to be respectful of time, but before we head out, is there anything else that you wanted to plug? I know, I mean, there's an awesome Telegram with everyone that's on SuperRare. There's an amazing newsletter that you guys pump out that I'm a big fan of. Obviously, there's the art on the site. Is there anything else that people need to be aware of, that they should be subscribed to? And is there anything else that you want to plug?
Yeah. So check out the newsletter if people aren't getting that already. And then we're doing I just ordered a Oculus Quest that I'm super excited about. And we're going to be at ETH Denver doing like a VR showcase kind of experiment. So if anybody listening is going to be in Denver, I believe it's like February 14th to 16th, come say hi and play with the Oculus Quest. It's going to be fun. And then also February 20th in New York, we're going to be at NFT NYC. So, if you're there, come say what's up and we'll try to give you a t-shirt.
Sweet. Did you have any extra questions, Rizzle?
No, man, this has been fascinating. And John, really appreciate you, man, taking the time to field all of our questions. And it's been great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. This is super fun. I think it's just fun to sit around and talk about crypto art. So I love what Conlin's been doing, the Meetup, Crypto Voxels. I think there needs to be more hangouts and people just talking about crypto art because it's super fun to do.
Totally agreed. And totally looking forward to all the developments that will arise heading forward and all the great things that I'm sure will happen in and around SuperRare and the crypto art space. So it was a pleasure to speak, John. Have a great day and keep building, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same to you, Matthew. Love the work you guys are doing at Scent. Keep it up. And Rizzle, pleasure to meet you, even if it's just via audio.
Likewise, man. Looking forward to seeing what else you guys have coming to the table.
All right. Well, take care, guys.
Take care, John.
Bye.